Okay, hi guys. So we're gonna start. I'm gonna start right exactly now at 5:03. So welcome, thank you everybody for joining us on our virtual town hall. My name is Alexandra Brathwaite. I am the social justice coordinator for Queens Defenders, which is formerly known as Queens Law Associates. I am one of the main co-hosts for tonight that oversees the Blank Project. So Queens Defenders, for those of you that don't know, is a public defense law firm and also a non-for-profit organization who caters to the community in various ways, whether it's for food distributions of families, free housing, help, immigration assistance, youth programming, free tutoring, homework help, and much more. One of the newest programs in the for Queens Defenders is the Blank Project that myself and Angela Williams oversees. But without further ado, instead of me talking about the Blank Project, I would love for our own members to explain it. So, Roa, if you don't mind unmuting yourself and explain what the Blank Project is.
Hi guys, so my name is Roa and I'm currently a member of the Blank Project and I hope to stay a member for the Blank Project. We focus on building leaders and activists in a new culture, and it's culture with a K, just so you know. Members of the Blank Project learn about law, organize rallies, marches, we fight for social justice. Our team is committed to standing with and fighting for marginalized groups within our own country. The goal is to raise our voices, bring awareness to systemic racism. We want to educate our youth about our own history, all
Hey,
men and
I'm
women to be
honest,
involved, and nobody
and
to be
I
discriminated
don't.
in our community and our nation. We just want to create a change, and it starts within our own area that we're in. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Roa. So then we're gonna move into our programming for tonight. Again, thank you all for joining. I know it's who wants to be on a meeting at 5 o'clock, but we want to bring awareness to human rights. So without further ado, can our other moderators as well introduce themselves? Our moderators tonight are Brittany Dixon, Jaden Gabb, Giselle Carter, and Shadaima Walters. If you guys don't mind, can you please state your name, your age, school, and so on and so forth?
Hi everyone, so my name is Brittany Dixon. I'm 21 years old and I'm currently a master's student at Queens College.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name is Jaden Gabb. I am 16 years old. I am a junior at Channelview School for Research, and I'll be one of your moderators tonight.
Hello, everyone. I'm Giselle Carter. I'm 19 years old, and I'm a sophomore at Nyack College, and I'll be one of your moderators tonight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shadaima Walters. I'm 17. I'm a senior at Channelview School for Research, and I'll be your chat moderator for tonight.
Yes, thank you everybody from the Blank Project. That is our moderators. Anybody else that is here from the Blank Project, if you would like, can you introduce yourself? Like Tracy. Wait, Tracy, unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tracy. My name is Tracy Morrison. I'm a senior at Channelview School for Research.
Hi, Tracy. And we have plenty more. The Blank Project currently has a total of 22 youth that are in the program with Queens Defenders. And again, we have weekly meetings on Tuesday where we discuss different topics revolving around human rights, criminal rights. We do know your rights. We talk about programming, organizations, how to organize rallies, functions. Recently, we actually just did our Coats and Cans event that we did in November, and we did it in December recently. So we do a decent amount for the community thus far, considering we just started, So I see Brittany is now joining back. So let's just give her a second so that she can hear us all. Okay. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce the panel if possible. I hope everyone is here. So we have a huge panel, literally a huge panel. So we have a number of people. I want to make sure I have the full list right here. Give me 1 second as I scroll down. Okay, so we'll start off now. We have our fantastic Queens Defenders team. We have Daniel Rosero. We have Aaliyah St. Omer. We have Karan Kukreja. If you guys don't mind, the first three, can you guys introduce yourselves? What do you do at Queens Defenders, your contribution, and your title?
Sure thing, Alex. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
No problem.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Dan Rosero. Some of you guys remember me as the teacher of the summer internship project. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I'm really excited about that. So great to see you guys again and hear you guys in college and doing these big things and join the Blank Project. So my job is I'm the manager at the Outreach Center. So there we do legal cases, we handle social issues, such as like if there's a housing issue or if people need certain resources. And we also do services for the youth, as you guys know, with like youth justice courts.
Thank you. Karam, if you don't mind, would you like to introduce yourself?
No problem. First, I want to say thank you for having me here tonight, Alex, and I want to thank Ms. Williams as well. I don't see her, but thank you, Ms. Williams. My name is Karan Kukreja. I see some familiar faces as well. I don't know if some of you were around for the mock team or the mock trial, but my name's Karan Kukreja. I'm an attorney at Queens Defenders. My title is a staff attorney, and I handle criminal cases at Queens Defenders. I handle a wide array of cases, anything from speeding to robberies and burglaries. So I'm happy to be here tonight, and thank you all for having me.
Thank you, thank you. I don't know if Aaliyah is here. I'm not too sure. We'll give her a few more minutes and then we'll come back to her. But next, moving down our huge panel, Andre from It's a Process. If you don't mind, can you please introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, thank you guys for having me. Please excuse my attire. I'm actually in Antigua joining you guys, taking a break from our vacay to make sure that we're supporting our youth and the people that are really trying to get involved and do what we want to do. Glad to see all these great people on the panel. Glad to see all these happy young faces ready to put in that work. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, moving down the line, Sabrina Parker, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yes, hi. So I am the founder of Voices of Black Power, a Black women's empowerment organization for Black women who've been impacted by sexual abuse and trauma. And I also do things within the community to offer my support in terms of, curating creative healing spaces, giving back in ways like this, just holding conversation. So I do a lot, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Moving down the line, we have Assemblyman Khalil Anderson. If you do not mind introducing yourself, if you are still there. Khalil. No, I think he got clicked out, so we'll come back to Khalil. So then we have our fantastic representative from the District Attorney's Office. We have two of them, actually. If you both don't mind introducing yourselves.
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? First, I would like to say thank you for having the District Attorney's Office participate in this program. My name is Miriam Sani Adigan. I'm an attorney, and my title is Bureau Chief of the Intake Enhancement Bureau at the Queens DA's Office. That bureau is responsible for all of the over 40,000 arrests that we deal with in Queens County over the course of a year, and assessing the cases and determining which cases we will determine to prosecute.
Wow, thank you so much. And Mr. Daniel Brown.
Hi, I'm Dan Brown. I'm here as part of the Queens District Attorney's Office. I'm with the Community Engagement Team. Before going any further, Alexandra, you're doing such an amazing job with this. This is the best run Zoom event I've ever been at, so you deserve some award for that. But I love the Queens Defenders. I'm a Rockaway resident. It's always great to be here with you all. I'm going to take a back seat tonight and let Mariam do the talking for the office, but I'm so happy to be here with you all, and thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I can't take the credit because I got everybody here, right? This is fantastic. I just did the program. That's it. That is it, I promise. But without further ado, I see Khalil, Mr. Assemblyman is back. Mr. Assemblyman Anderson, can you please introduce yourself? If you can hear me. Mr. Anderson. Okay, we'll come back again to Khalil. So we're gonna move on. So then we have a representative from the Human Rights Commission. If you do not mind, can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Yang. I'm with the New York City Commission on Human Rights. So the Commission on Human Rights enforces one of the most comprehensive civil rights law in the country. Basically, if you are discriminated, whether in employment, housing, or public accommodations, you have rights and you have protections. So we are a civil rights agency, which you come and file complaints, as well as we provide workshops to provide education, so you know more about your rights.
Thank you so much for being a part of this program with us. And last but not least, Mr. Assemblyman Khalil Anderson, can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Some audio issues there. Good evening. Thank you so much, Alexandra, and to everyone here. So my name is Khalil Anderson. I'm the State Assembly member for District 31. It's a great honor to be here tonight to talk about what human rights look like for us. And I'm super excited to have been your member and representative of the Assembly for the last month and a half. It's been a great honor. And yesterday was a big win for human rights across the state as we voted on a historic package of legislation that would essentially end all evictions in the interim for at least the next 60 days, as well as foreclosures. So I guess I don't want to bore folks with that, but I'm definitely going to go into more details on what that work looks like and going forward, what our office's commitment to human rights looks like. So I'm looking forward. Thank you, Queens Defenders and all the young people who are on tonight who put this on. I see a lot of familiar faces. Good to see you, Karan and Dan and Daniel, Sabrina. Good to see you all. Andre, good to see you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all of our panelists, for being present. Thank you for, responding so quickly to the email. I know we only, I sent it out like a week ago, but I am so happy that you all are here. I promise you all the kids from the Blink Project too are very happy. And a big thank you from Queens Defenders as well. So we're gonna move straight into the next part of our programming. So I just want to make sure that everybody has some type of understanding of how it's going to go. We have 3 categories. 3 categories are prison reform. It's also protection of human rights. And the last category is immigration and healthcare. So the way that we have it structured is that all of you have received emails from me that have specific questioning that each certain questions we want to answer from you, right? We want you to respond to a specific question. However, there are other questions that all the other panelists will be asked, but if you would like to have an input or you guys would like to, mention something or you want to add further, you can feel free to do so, okay? Please also make sure that you remember that we're only giving everybody about, say, 3 minutes to answer each question just because we're pressed on time, okay? Okay, great. And 2, so without further ado, I'll let Brittany, Jaden, and Shadiman take it further. Okay, so Brittany, if you would like, can you please start?
Okay, so again, good evening. The first question is for Assembly Member Khalil Anderson. If you need me to repeat anything, just let me know and I'd be more than willing to do so. So the first question is, do you feel like those who were previously incarcerated still feel imprisoned after their release? Do you need me to repeat the question or?
Yes, Brittany, that would be helpful. Please repeat the question.
Okay, so the question is, do you feel that those who were previously incarcerated still feel imprisoned within their own nation after their release?
May I? I'll take this one.
Yes, the question is for you.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Let me turn up my volume. That's my apologies. Okay.
In fact, the question is for Assemblyman Khalil Anderson and Ms. Miriam from the District Attorney's Office.
Sure. So absolutely. And that looks like in the employment space, right? When folks are shut out of employment, when folks are shut out of higher education opportunities, when folks are judged based off of their past and not what they are doing in the current. And I think that how we work to eliminate some of those imprisonments, if you will, is changing the laws, changing how systems work. I know that I recently had an interview with one of the labor unions that was looking at a package of legislation that would fight back against some of folks who have returned home or in the process of recidivism or trying to avoid recidivism, the package of legislation that would allow them to enter the construction industry a lot easier. Those jobs are union jobs, which would allow them to have that space. These are the ways we kind of remove some of those barriers, but also looking at our schools and academic institutions and making sure that they're accommodating of folks who are returning home and are not, again, castigating folks for their past, but creating a roadway and opportunity for them to continue to be citizens that they've already served their time. Let's allow them to get jobs and reintegrate into society. I think that this is definitely a double jeopardy issue where folks have already served their time, but are still being punished for things that happened in the past. So we have to look at that holistically. And I think looking at these individual industries like construction, higher education, things of that nature, and eliminate some of those barriers is the way we do it, because we've already did ban the box, we've already done stuff like that, but now these individual industries have to, we have to make sure that they're compliant.
Gotcha. And this is just a quick follow-up question, but how do you think that we can make rehabilitation more effective? Because you did speak about that in your answer, but what methods do you think we should go towards, or which path?
To making rehabilitation
more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when folks are away, right, it's not so much solely a punishment for whatever, but it's actually making sure that we're investing in that person being able to have employment opportunities, transitional services for when they come back home, they're able to integrate without issue. I neglected to mention even housing opportunities. There's some barriers there for folk who are returning home. Whether it's state sanctioned housing, whether it's city housing, there are a lot of barriers in general, even private, apartments, they want to do background checks. These are things that prevent folks from being able to attain housing, even NYCHA, for example. There's a background check that exists. And if you're returning home, and you were on the lease before, there's some barriers there as well that we have to look at, improving upon.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. Also, the same question to Ms. Miriam. Do you feel that those who were previously incarcerated still feel imprisoned within the nation after release?
I don't want to, speak for all who've been incarcerated, but I do believe that there may be some who do feel as if they're still incarcerated even after release, based off of the way the system is set up for those who are released, because some people are on parole, some people are on probation, and those systems are set up to monitor them, and they should help, but there needs to be a restructuring as to how they are helping. As the Assemblyman has mentioned, there has to be a focus towards helping to restore, because the idea of incarceration is that someone is facing consequences for their actions. And if they've done that time, when they come out, they should be seen as someone who's whole. But our criminal justice system, in fact, has very stringent rules upon incarcerated inmates who are released that make it quite difficult for them. And I think also while they're in prison, I think that there needs to be a push for them to also move towards things that are going to help them when they get out. So yes, I do believe that people still feel as if they're in prison, even though they're out. I think that the system needs to go towards a more restorative model, which helps them grow. And I think that those that are in prison need a pipeline to success. They need mentors. They need programs that are set up to help them not fail, but succeed.
Thank you. I would ask how you feel we should make rehabilitation more effective, but I feel like you already answered that and covered that within your answer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I would love to hear from Mr.
Actually,
he had
really quickly, I don't mean to interrupt. May I just add really quickly, add to Brittany's question, just to provide some specific legislation that we're going to jump on as an office that would really help break some of these barriers. There's a tax credit that developers get to hire folks who are formerly incarcerated, but there's an issue, right? There's no transparency in what hiring looks like for these developers. So the Assembly Bill number 10847, that bill allows for the workforce tax credit that developers get. Allows there to be a tracking to make sure that these developers are actually hiring folks who are formerly incarcerated and not just hiring them to meet the quota and then firing them just to get that tax credit. So making sure that there's transparency with that tax credit, that's number one. Number two, unfortunately, believe it or not, folks who are formerly incarcerated can't work overtime or night shifts because it's part of conditions of release might be ankle monitor or bracelet or curfew and what have you, and that's keeping them incarcerated in their community. So there's another bill that our office is going to support, Assembly Bill number 10788, that would allow workers who are formerly incarcerated to work overtime, to work night shifts, give them that opportunity to have employment and not be hindered again by their past, double jeopardy. And then another piece of legislation we were looking at as well, believe it or not, and these are interesting, these small little barriers lead up to other things. If you're formerly incarcerated, you're not allowed to take place in labor strikes, right? You're not allowed to protest. And it's very interesting. So there's another bill that we're looking at in the Assembly that would eliminate that barrier as well.
Yeah, that was a great response. I just want to remind everyone we have 3 minutes, and I have a question I actually want to direct the same exact question to Karan in a different way. So we all know that there is a box when you're filling out an application for a job. How do we eliminate that box? How do we do that?
Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate the question. I actually, out of the questions I had, I found that one to be the easiest. And I'd like to reframe it in a different way. It's not the box we need to eliminate, Jaden. It's the conviction that underlies it that we need to eliminate. The box can exist. It's all of those convictions that are tacked up on young people of color that have to check that box. So it's not the box I have a problem with. It's that people are in positions where they must check that box. So I think that's what we really need to work on.
Yeah, and I have a question for the Assemblyman. You just talked about your tax cut, the tax cut off of jobs that would happen if they hire people that previous felons, right? Or convicted felons. So you said that there would be a way for them to track this. Can you go more in depth in how that eliminates the box?
Yeah, so go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, continue.
No, so what I'm saying is that there is legislation that there's a tax credit that already exists that the developers, of course, are taking advantage of to use that tax credit so they can pay less taxes and save costs, etc. It's called the Workforce Opportunity Tax Credit. What I'm saying is that there's legislation that would increase transparency on the use of that tax credit so that we can actually be able to track and make sure that the corporations are actually hiring folks who were formerly incarcerated and not just meeting a quota, keeping them on payroll for a day or two and saying we hired them and being able to still reap the benefits of that tax credit. And I think that that's important that we have that level of transparency with some of these developers because they will circumvent the system.
Thank you. And I see that sorry if I mispronounce your name. Yeah, she has a question about the box.
I'm sorry because I'm new to this platform, but I'm presuming that you all are talking about the box in which someone needs to check if they've been convicted of a crime. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
And the responses that I get is that those of you on this call feel as if that box is a hindrance to individuals gaining employment. Is that correct? So I think it's about the question and what the question is being used for. I think the question is actually a valid question if in fact where the person is trying to seek employment, though that characteristic is necessary to determine whether an individual will be able to do the job. But if it's a question that's just being asked so that you can discriminate against the person, then no, it shouldn't be there.
So I think
the question needs to be reformatted. Jaden, go. You wanted to ask a question?
Yeah. Sorry, my audio just cut out for a second, but I was going with that where I was asking, how do we enforce that then? How do we enforce that these companies or these jobs don't discriminate against our against using the box as a way to single out a person for a job, right? So like how do we do that?
So that's going to be a little difficult because, of course, not everyone is transparent regarding their hiring processes. But, generally speaking, questions should be structured and fair to everyone, right? Like anyone who's applying to a job every candidate should get the exact same question, the exact same amount of time. But the goals of the question should be towards whether or not it fulfills the requirements of the job. So, for example, if someone is applying to a bank, right, but they've been convicted of grand larceny, that means that there's a propensity of theft, right? So someone in the bank might want to know whether or not this individual has a conviction of theft, but then there should be a follow-up question that goes on to allow the individual to demonstrate that that was something of their past, that they've been rehabilitated. There are other circumstances that will explain why someone has that. The question needs to be revamped. They should be allowed the opportunity to explain their wrongs or explain the situation and circumstance. I think that we should not be as concerned about the box, but as more concerned about the applicant and training them as to how to answer questions and training them how to explain these situations, because we all know that life isn't exactly fair for everyone. Circumstances are always different, and your environment may place you in places that you may not want to be in. And you make choices that may have negative effects, but that doesn't define who you are. And you as the applicant need to know how to explain that so that someone will be the opportunity.
Definitely, I agree. And I want to ask Mr. Yang about, since he's the commissioner of human rights, I want to ask him, what is the humane way to eliminate the box? Miss,
No problem.
sorry, can you pronounce your name so you don't get it mixed up?
My name is a tongue twister for everyone, so I'm going to make it very easy. You can just call me Sammy, okay?
Sorry?
But my name is pronounced Sanny Adigan, but to make it easy, you can just call me Sanny.
Okay, all right. Miss
Were you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's a little scratchy, but Miss Adigan, right? Like what Miss Adigan just previously said, how do we eliminate the box without with knowing human rights and knowing what you do? How do we eliminate the box without preventing the human rights of the job, the employer and the employee?
So I cannot speak regarding about New York State. However, in New York City, ever since 2015, Local Law 63 was passed. And what Local Law 63 was known as is known as the Fair Chance Act. And basically what the Fair Chance Act actually stated was that most employers are not allowed to even have the box stating that, did you have a criminal record? They're not allowed to ask that question at all. The only time an employer can actually ask you that question, if you ever had a criminal record, is after a conditional offer letter has been made. So I'm muted. Oh, am I muted? So can everyone hear me actually? Yes?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Great. Sorry, I think someone just unmuted. So basically what local law 63 stated is that most employers are not allowed to ask you about your employment, about your criminal history background, which is your conviction record. The only time they can ask you about that question is if they offer you a conditional offer letter, meaning that they stated that, hey, you passed the interview, I would like to hire you, but before I hire you, I have to, go through your criminal background. I have to check your credit score. Now, in the event that the employer found out that you had a criminal background of some sort, they're supposed to fill out a form known as Form 23A, I believe. And basically the form has to be individualized to the person, stating how is this person's, previous criminal records will cause them to be at, a high level risk to the safety of their customers and the safety of their other employees and their company as such. So if you go outside and you are in New York City, you find a job in New York City, and they're asking you, have you had a criminal record, or there's an interview question or a box, right? Take a photo of the interview, or if they don't let you take a photo, file a complaint with the commission. We'll send a tester into that business or that company, and if the tester found out that, hey, there was that question, we penalize them. The maximum penalty is $250,000. So, for like an employer who says, who discriminate against you because of your criminal background history, we could penalize them $250,000. So we know that there is still a lot of businesses that still does this type of discriminatory work. The problem is that a lot of people are kind of afraid, or they don't know who to ask, or they don't want to, they basically look for a job, so kind of just ignore the questions. They just ignore it, right? File complaints. You have to file complaints. Not only does this filing complaint assist you, but it will assist other individuals who are looking for that job in the future. Because what it does is make sure that the employer knows that if they do it again in the future, that's $250,000 highest penalty that we could take out from their pocket, right? Like that's money that they're going to be losing every time they discriminated. So yes, but my answer is ban the box. The box has been banned already, usually in New York City. If you do get discriminated, or if you ever seen that in any type of applications, please do file complaints by calling the Commission on Human Rights. Yeah, hopefully.
Whoa. Thank you. I truly appreciate that. I have a question for Sabrina Parker. Sabrina, do you agree with lessening the process required by felons to restore their voting rights? Should I repeat the question again?
Yeah, repeat it one more time.
Okay.
Say it a little slower.
No problem. Do you agree with lessening the process required by felons to restore their voting rights?
Yeah, I don't agree with the criminalization of people who have been incarcerated to block them from being a part of the political system. I think that's another way to reenact a form of slavery, because people of color are disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system. And so I don't know if anybody's familiar with the documentary 13th, but they speak about how that amendment was, stipulated to basically place, the incarcerated back into like a pre-slavery status. And I think that doesn't make room for rehabilitation in our community, because now you're subjugating someone to something that maybe they did commit the crime, maybe they didn't commit the crime. And a lot of people have been exonerated. And so people are still living by their past for something that they may or may not have done, and something that they may have done when they were under certain circumstances. People come from different types of communities, and their way of surviving obviously may not be that of, I'm sorry, is my phone like making too much noise for you? Yes, I still have a house phone. Yeah, so based on where you come from, I feel like that's discriminatory to people who come from communities of poverty, communities with high crime, communities with high unemployment. You have to consider the factors of a person's lifestyle when they were being incarcerated. What opportunities did they have? What opportunities might they have missed because of their circumstances? And so I don't agree with that at all.
I really appreciate your answer. I love how thorough you was, and you really explained it. So I really appreciate that so much. I have a question for Aaliyah. So do you believe that society should become more educated of the rights that an inmate has?
Hi, thank you, Giselle. I definitely do feel like they should know what the rights of an inmate has. I feel like for one, we're not in the system to see what goes on behind closed doors, but I do feel like there's a lot of rights that inmates may know they have, but are unable to use it. There's different things, like I was researching it online to like get a better feel for it. And there's something like the right to express complaints, and inmates can complain about prison conditions, and they have the right to access the courts to air their complaints. But at the same time, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. A lot of the times, other people, other inmates look at each other as maybe snitches or someone that is causing trouble. And when they want to air out complaints or say, okay, this is wrong or this is not going right, they get they basically get targeted for it. And then there's also the right to be free from sexual crime. However, we all know that there's a lot of sexual assault that goes on in prisons. So they have a lot of rights that maybe not everyone knows of, but we definitely know that these rights are getting violated from the ones that we do know of and the ones we are aware of. And I feel like if everyone had a better understanding of the rights inmates had and understood how these rights are getting violated, there would be a better platform for us to really work together and be able to, resolve the problems that are going on into our justice system. Because if no one's bringing awareness to it, then nothing will be addressed and fixed properly.
Thank you, Aaliyah.
Thank you so much, Aaliyah. So the next question I would like to ask is to Andre and for Miss Miriam. The question is, do you think that the negative stigmas about youth reentry makes the process harder in terms of programming or organizing for youth programs and so on and so forth within the lines of that?
Okay, cool. I'll definitely, before I get to that, like Aaliyah was saying, being somebody formerly incarcerated, I know the process of filing a complaint in prison through the grievance department. And I just want to let you guys know that it's kind of just like when it happens with the NYPD, where, the NYPD investigates themselves and find themselves not guilty. It's the same thing that happens in prison, except now you're in there, you're by yourself, and then you have to deal with the fact that the officers are calling you a snitch, not even the other inmates. And when an officer sees an inmate that they deem as a snitch going against the jail, then you generally find that you have other issues and other things that you go on with that. So I just wanted to touch on that. And also, when you guys were talking about rehabilitation, I think that we have to really start working towards the word reform, because rehabilitation is to bring somebody from what they once were. And if they didn't have much to begin with, we're not bringing them back to anything. So what we have to do is work on doing more reform, and reform starts just like with anything else. It starts at the moment of contact, and that reform should actually start damn near in the precinct. As far as the youth, I think that it is what's already been perpetuated time and time again. A lot of people say that we got to reach our youth, we have to deal with our youth, and then they look at the youth and say, oh, well, I don't want to deal with them. They're not going to listen either. So that's kind of what's been transpiring with our youth. We say that they need help. We say that we got to get them help. But then everybody's looking at each other, pointing at each other like, well, you help them. I don't want to deal with them, or they can't be reached and things of that nature. And that goes on. And, people tend to see that, I'm also a senior counselor at an outpatient treatment program, along as a program manager for the Council Airport Opportunities, where I get the formerly incarcerated job. And as a program coordinator at an outpatient program, I know that when programs try to bring in adolescents for treatment, the stigma is that it doesn't work because they don't stick to it, they don't do this. And, these are the things that they say happen, but then there's no, let's find a way to match it. It's just like, we don't need to have youth at this program because they're not going to come. And if they come, they're going to be disrespectful and all those other things. So I think that the problem is not, necessarily our youth. The problem is those that are in charge, that have the power and are in the position to actually reach out and do something, saying, we did this for them, it didn't work, we're just going to move on.
So Alex, can you repeat the question again?
Sure, no problem. Give me 1 second to scroll back up. The question was, do you think that negative stigmas about youth reentry makes the process harder in regards to programming?
I do, but so I don't want to be negative. I'm going to go with a positive response. At the Queens District Attorney's Office, we have a program called Second Chance, and it's geared towards our youth. I see Ms. Joseph is on the call right now, and so she can attest to it, where we have young individuals who unfortunately have found themselves tied up in the criminal justice system. And the whole purpose of the program is to allow them to participate in programs that will assist them to move forward with their lives. And if they're successful, their convictions or their cases are dismissed and sealed, so that way they are able to move forward and continue to participate in programs. I think what's a huge problem that we have, generally speaking, is just that there are a lot of ideas and there are a lot of organizations that talk about what we need to do to fix environments and to fix certain groups, but these programs are not always able to touch in every environment. So I'm a person who grew up in East New York, and a lot of programs that I've now found out that exist, I didn't know about when I was, younger and I was a kid. It was just, by luck of who I knew in my own environment. So I think it's that we need to look and kind of organize better how we are able to reach out to the youth that we're concerned about in those neighborhoods that most people don't want to go to, but a lot of us walk every day.
Thank you so much, Miss Miriam. Jaden, would you like to give our little announcement?
Yes, I just want to remind everyone, remember you have 3 minutes to answer each question. Yeah.
Thank you, Jaden. Thank you. And the last question in this section for prison reform is for Dan Rosero. The question is, should prison labor used by large corporations be abolished?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Dan.
So first things first, I want to say is that prison labor, specifically products that are made from inmates, is actually illegal, right? There's the Anheuser-Busch Act of 1935. So it's technically illegal for inmates to produce goods and to have it through interstate commerce, right? Exchange between states. However, there's kind of a loophole, right? So what happens is if private companies and these prisons do a joint venture, that's when you're able to have these inmates begin to make furniture, work at farms and work in produce, right? Now, the only issue is that these jobs, while they look good on paper, are, when you look closer, these inmates are being severely underpaid. So for example, the Prison Industry Enhancement Certification Program, it's allowed in all 50 states. It looks great on paper. These inmates are able to, work and learn and understand things that are necessary for the workforce. However, 80% of their pay can get deducted from that. 80%. Can anyone live on 80% of minimum wage taken away? Right? The answer is most likely no. So I believe that private companies, of course, are capitalizing on this. So there needs to be a huge reform, a huge change for it.
Thank you so much, Dan. So now we're going to move on to the next topic. Well, the next category. The next category is protection of our human rights. And the first question, Brittany, if you don't mind, this question is going to Karan, Assemblyman Khalil Anderson, Mr. Sam Yang, and Ms. Miriam. The question is, what sort of legislation do you feel is needed to ensure protection of basic human rights? You want me to read it one more time? No? Okay.
No, I heard you, Alex.
Okay,
Thanks
great.
for the question. Not to be negative, but I don't think there's any specific legislation that's going to protect basic human rights. If you look at history as an example, we're all familiar with the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, guarantees equal protection under the law. That was ratified by the states in 1868. In 1896, I'm sorry, I know these numbers are boring, but basically 30 years later, Plessy versus Ferguson was ruled on by the Supreme Court. And if you all recall, the ruling was separate but equal. So the 14th Amendment is passed, it guarantees equality. Then 30 years later, the Supreme Court says, yeah, but. So to answer that question, I don't think there is any specific legislation that is going to guarantee basic human rights. I think it's all elements of society and us attacking all of those elements, putting more people of color in positions of power, including the judgeships, including legislators like Assemblyman Anderson that's here. It involves all of us working every angle. It can't work by having people of color in only one place, only attacking it through one angle. And so to answer your question, I don't think any one basic legislation can protect all human rights. History has shown it can't, because there will always be exceptions. But now to answer it lightly in a positive sense, one piece of legislation that I do think would be helpful, that I do think we can all agree on is, and I think you embarked upon it a little bit earlier when you were talking to Daniel, is that the for-profit prison system. I know I'm getting close to 3 minutes. President Obama attempted to abolish for-profit prison systems on the federal level. That was repealed by the Trump administration. On a very basic level, if we're making money for each person that's incarcerated, it's going to make it difficult to argue that people should not be incarcerated. So I think we can agree there should be no profit in the incarceration of any individuals. That has never been touched on by the states. So even while President Obama attempted to abolish it, the states never touched it. Every state prison is a for-profit prison. So lastly, so many of these towns in the state are built on these prisons. If you go to these places like Attica and all these places throughout New York State, so many people are employed in these prisons. They're plumbers, they're electricians, they work as staff, they're corrections officers. I think we have to find a way where we're not profitizing off people being incarcerated. So abolishing for-profit prisons in the entirety of the US, I think would be a start.
Thank you, Karan. Assemblyman Khalil Anderson, would you like to answer the question as well?
Yeah, I want to first thank you, Karan, for putting that into perspective and also giving me some homework. We really have to end, particularly with the state piece, I'll talk about it in a second, but we really do need to end for-profit prisons. In the Springfield Gardens section of my district, we do have a federal for-profit prison operated by the GEO Group that I'd like and I've advocated for as I was campaigning, will continue to advocate for the closure of. I don't think that we should have prisons that exchange dollars for individuals, for people. It's capitalism in its worst form, and it's structural racism in its worst and employed form. So I think we need to look at that. I think a positive, though, is that the governor did announce the closure or the pending closure of 3 prisons upstate in Orange County, right in Clinton Hill, near the Canadian border, Clinton Correctional Facility, a couple of those other spaces they were announced to be closed, and we need to continue to close for-profit prisons. It doesn't make sense. But I think back to the human rights question, I think that housing is a human right. I think it's a basic human right. And the package of legislation that we pushed yesterday, was signed by the governor, is only a step in the right direction. But I think that we need a formal declaration on the state level that explicitly declares that housing is a human right, and so that we can work to that end, so that we can work to house the folks who are going through chronic issues of homelessness, chronic issues of lack of affordable, real and sustainable housing. And it's a goal that we work towards resolving so that people who are facing instability in housing understand that the state has their back in the sense of being able to provide safe and affordable housing. I know that on the city level, we have somewhat of a declaration, but I'd love to see something statewide that declares housing a human right, a basic human right. But as Karan said, there are issues of, there's no one piece of legislation that we can push tomorrow that would encompass all aspects of human rights. We have to attack it in each area where we see human rights violations taking place. And then in addition to having that legislation, we need to have the agencies or mechanisms that are responsible for executing the law follow up and make sure that they're executing the law rightfully. There's no sense in us passing this legislation and that legislation if we don't have the tools to carry it out and make sure that the legislation is being accurately followed up with, and that's important.
I actually have a follow-up question for that, because you said that people are in the process of closing for-profit prisons, like upstate, right? So my question to you is, does closing for-profit prisons help ensure protection of human rights when other prisons can easily be expanded?
No, so when I said that, I was referring to the overall movement of the state going in that direction. Obviously, it's not moving fast enough in terms of closing for-profit prisons, but I was just happy to see that the state was closing those 3 for-profit prisons that are upstate, because that is a key proponent of keeping, you know, cheap labor and being and exploiting those opportunities. So I think it's positive that they're moving in that direction, but I think we need to move faster and more strategic. I see Karan, I didn't want to.
Alex, if I may?
Yes.
Yeah, the answer is hell no. Of course not. But it does provide one less incentive. Racism still exists. You can eliminate the for-profit element, but we still live in a racist nation. However, we do not need to add the added incentive of it being a profitable, expenditure as well. So it provides one less incentive, and we got to chip away at this.
Gotcha.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Just highlight, yeah, thank you for that, Karan. Just highlighting that we're moving to that end and that this is not where we need to be.
Just as a reminder to everyone, we are a little short on time. 3 minutes per question, just a reminder. Okay?
Just a reminder. Thank you so much, Jaden.
These are good questions. We want to give you guys good answers.
Definitely. I completely understand. You know, he's just giving his reminder. But if you may, Ms. Miriam and Mr. Sam Yang, if you guys don't mind having your input on that question, just to reiterate the question, it was, what sort of legislation do you feel is needed to ensure protection of basic human rights? And then we'll move on to the next question.
I'm going to go quick. I'm not going to even hold you guys up, because a lot of what the previous speakers have said, I agree with. I think what's more important is ensuring that everyone knows what their human rights are and what we consider to be human rights, and having individuals and agencies that follow up to ensure that those rights are not being violated.
And I'll just follow. I agree with all of these previous speakers as well. There is no one piece of legislation that will provide enough protection when it comes to human rights. There's always going to be some loopholes possibly in the legislation or such, or individuals, these people are just racist. People will be racist, and that might be true. So if you're racist, you're not going to hold up to whatever is written in the law, right? So what has to be done is, there might be some better enforcement, but also is, remember, if you felt that you were discriminated, if you felt that something is wrong, you gotta protest, you gotta join up together, you gotta fight for it. If you believe there is something that needs to be added into legislation, you gotta fight for it, you gotta include it into legislation. So, there is not one piece. Any type of right is always growing. So, if you wanna add something, talk to your local officials, talk to the Commission on Human Rights. You guys are the stakeholders for the Commission on Human Rights, meaning that if there's something needed, we'll speak to you, you let us know, and we'll add it in. For example, pre-marijuana testing employment was just passed this year. So before that, employers can say, oh, you use marijuana, we can't hire you. But now it has been banned. It makes it illegal for most jobs to require that pre-marijuana testing. Right.
Thank you so much. So the next question, and then we're going to move on to the next topic because we're pressed on time at this point. The next question is, do you believe the law protects our people? This question is posed for Mr. Andre and Mr. Daniel Rosero.
So when you say that when the law protects our people, it's important to understand how the laws fallen short. We're talking about all these human rights, and one thing that comes to mind is the right to privacy. That's not even in the Constitution. I believe in 2002, Lawrence v. Texas, that was a case where 2 consensual adults, homosexual adults, had police barge into their homes and arrest them, right? So no, I don't think the law adequately protects the people who are of color, who are of lower socioeconomic status. It's a process, right? We need to continue to evaluate these laws and see how they were made in favor of those in charge, right? So that's just my opinion on that.
I definitely agree with Daniel. I mean, he hit it right on the head. What we have to do is stop ignoring the actual statistics, the numbers, the evidence that is there. You know, a lot of these laws are not equal to everybody, and there's so many different examples of that. But like what they were saying previously, we have to make sure that we're in the positions to fight, and it's not just about the laws; it's about the human rights and tying everything in together. I think that we have to make sure that we do.
Definitely.
Okay, so I'm sorry, y'all know I'm gonna have to say something as
No,
the
you're
prosecutor on the call, right? Like, I'm the brown face that works for the man, so I am going to have to speak and say say something, right? Because
Breaking up, guys.
yes, there are some laws that are inherently discriminatory on their the law. It's the application of the law and the people who have control over the laws that are using them in a discriminatory manner. I love this topic. I love the platform that we have right now. Be more involved of agencies process office that is
I'm sorry, Miss Miriam, you're breaking up really badly. If possible, I think she clocked out, guys. Yeah, it went boop boop. Okay, so we'll wait and hopefully she'll come back. Wait, is she there? I think I heard something.
She's there, but she's just
Oh, there
frozen.
you go. Miss Miriam, when you kind of broke up really badly just now. If possible, can you repeat yourself?
you guys.
If the internet.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Kind of.
Okay, so just really quick, because clearly the universe is involved. We all need to participate in these organizations and agencies so that our positions are known and are heard. Like, I can't be the only Black prosecutor, you know, Karan or Danielle can't be the only people of color at Queens Defenders. Like, we all have to be involved in these systems and try as much as possible to gain employment in this so we can make.
Thank you, Ms. Miriam. So we're gonna move on to the next topic, which is the final topic. It's on immigration and healthcare. So this first question is being posed to Sabrina and Mr. Assemblyman Khalil Anderson. Should healthcare be free? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think that shouldn't even really be a question. Because what are we gonna do without our health? That's one of the most fundamental forms of care that we should be offering to our people. In Europe, healthcare is free. I think it's interesting because we live in a society where we have, big pharma, which is a $1 billion industry, and they're making more money here off of people's disease as opposed to their wellness. And so it just goes to show that the priority is really not the people. And we already know that, even just talking about the law and if it supports or, protects our people, which we know that it doesn't. And there are loopholes and there are violations that are being upheld even in Supreme Courts. So I think the fact that healthcare isn't something that's accessible in a country where most people are living paycheck to paycheck, living in poverty, they are barely making it, and something as basic and as necessary as healthcare is not free, says a lot about where our priorities as a country is, and that we have a lot of work to do. Healthcare should definitely be something that's accessible to everyone.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. And then Mr. Assemblyman.
I'm gonna make this short and quick. Yes, hell yes, absolutely. Healthcare should be free. Healthcare is a basic human right. I support the New York Health Act, which would make healthcare free in the state of New York. I think that we don't do enough investment in our healthcare system, and then everything becomes privatized and for profit. The fact that we're profiting off of cancer patients, the fact that we're profiting off of allergy medication and EpiPens and things of that nature, asthma medication, when we know specific communities need these very, very vital tools to stay alive, is criminal. So I think that our pathway to getting to the level of investment that we need to make healthcare free is through the Health Act. I think that the state should be doing that. I think each individual municipality through the state should be funding opportunities for free healthcare. I don't think it should be just because you're low income, you get Medicaid, and the quality of the care is not the same because you're poor, and things like that. I think we need to level the playing field, make healthcare free across the board, and create a system where that's possible. And I think that it goes through the state. And I think that that's how we could really, really work to make healthcare equitable and create a level playing field in that respect. You have hundreds of thousands of families across the city-state that are thousands of dollars in debt because of medical bills, who will now be relieved from that debt if we made healthcare free in many aspects. If we relieve them from that debt, it puts them on an equal playing field as it relates to income inequality that exists from these types of debts. It's healthcare debt, it's school debt, it's housing debt that folks are behind in, as to why there's a space of income inequality. And on the school piece, I encourage you all over the next 20 odd days or so to push this new Biden administration to forgive and excuse, cancel, if you will, student debt, because student debt is one of the highest causes of income inequality between Black folks and white folks. That's just the plain truth. You're talking about 40% of Black families, and I know I went on to a tangent here, but it all relates. Black families that owe some type of higher education debt, and it's creating an income gap, or creating and expanding the income gap, same as healthcare, creating and expanding an income gap, and we have to eliminate these types of debts. And I think that by making healthcare free, we really could work towards that end. The bill has passed the Assembly dozens of times over, right? But we have to encourage our senators on the Senate side and the state to pass the legislation and get our governor to have the courage to push this legislation to make healthcare truly free in the state of New York. And I believe that we can do that.
Thank you so much, Khalil. The next question is for Mr. Sam Yang and Ms. Miriam. How has redlining affected our right to mobility?
Redlining was horrible. So if people know about redlining, that's not because redlining was horrible. I mean, people know about redlining. What basically happened was it prevented individuals from residing in one region over the other region based on their color of the skin, based on their race. And the effect that it has on today is it's dramatic, right? It's devastating. That's why, like in certain communities, certain neighborhoods, particularly in neighborhoods with higher poverty, you'll see more people of color. This was actually caused by redlining when previously they took out the resources from those particular communities. So that's my opinion of redlining. I'm sorry, Alex, can you mention what is the second part of the question?
Sure, no problem. The question was, how has redlining affected our right to mobility?
Okay. So as we know that one of the things about being a homeowner is that housing equals to money, is equals to capital, it's equals to wealth, right? What redlining did was that it kind of prevented individuals from owning houses, prevented individuals from gaining that wealth. So because of the redlining, people are now having difficult time moving to certain neighborhoods or difficult time buying their first house based on it. Yeah.
So I'm going to speak on my own behalf and not on the behalf of the District Attorney of Queens County. So me personally, I think redlining continues to affect our communities specifically, and very much so in New York City. I mean, if we all look around New York City, we'll notice that it's highly segregated, even though it's one of the most diverse areas in the world. Certain people live in certain areas, and as the previous speaker just mentioned, you know, we are unable to purchase homes in certain areas. I can speak personally that this summer, being someone who's an attorney, my husband is an engineer, we had trouble, or it was last summer, we had trouble purchasing a home which we could afford in District 29, which is like supposedly this, District 26, which is supposedly this great district in Queens, right? I literally had to file a complaint and file a lawsuit because they would not allow for me to purchase a home there. And it's all about mobility. And so our mobility is limited. So here I am, someone who's a professional, but because of redlining, I'm being kept out of a certain area. So I'm not able to be mobile, and I had to take my money elsewhere. So I do believe it affects us. It affects our ability to move into better areas. It affects our ability to get better resources such as schooling, education, healthcare, and that of course then limits our ability to get certain types of jobs. So we all have to pay attention as to what's happening and looking in our neighborhoods. And if we're not able to, I kind of firmly believe if I'm not going to be able or be wanted in a certain area, then I'm going to build the area that wants me and that's going to support me, and find places where we can build our own wealth and not rely on anyone else to do it.
Thank you. So I have a question for Sabrina and Aaliyah. Should financial literacy be taught in middle school and high school?
Should I go first?
Go ahead. It's either or. It's okay.
Okay. I think financial literacy should be taught as soon as possible, because we live in a society where we have to work for money. Everything that we do is based on money. And so it makes no sense that we're in $27 trillion debt. And it's because people don't understand the principles of money. They don't understand how it works. They weren't taught that before they got their first dollar, so they never got to understand the value of it. They were not taught how to spend it wisely or how to invest it to allow it to add value to them. And so I think financial literacy is something that this country has definitely been severely lacking in. And it goes to show that with the, debt that we're in as a country, that overall we don't even understand, the need to understand money and how finances work so that it can benefit us, because most people live paycheck to paycheck, about 80%. And Forbes quoted that, like, they actually said 78%, and that was last year before COVID. So what is it now? And that doesn't even account for personal debt that people are, living in.
I agree with Sabrina. I feel like it should really be taught in schools in general. We go to school every day learning so many different things, but a lot of the things, I feel like financial literacy is like one of the top things that we really should be learning about, since it affects us every day. I find it's kind of funny because just the other day I was speaking to my parents about opening a credit card, and I'm 18 years old. And I'm asking them different questions, and I'm like, so how does this work if I buy something this day? Like, trying to figure out how the whole credit card situation works. And then my dad looks at me, he's like, why are you asking me all these questions? Don't you learn this in school? And it's kind of funny to me, because you would think those type of things that you need to live life and continue on when you go to school and when you go into the workplace, those things are important for an individual to learn and grow. And it's definitely something they should learn at a young age, because a lot of us started working when we were 14 due to summer youth. So I really feel like this is something really important, because a lot of kids graduate, go off in the workplace, and they don't understand the importance of building credit from now to be able to buy a house and take out a loan later on in the future. And then they get into a lot of financial problems at the end, and then they have a lot of I wishes because they didn't know about these things sooner.
Can I also add to that? Just even considering that financial literacy also, you know, the lack of it disproportionately also affects people of color in our community, which also, you know, tends to keep us in poverty. Whereas, white people, they have generational wealth because their families were able to pass that down to them, whereas a lot of us, we didn't have that, we didn't have that privilege, and we also don't, for the most part, know like where our history traces back to, what land is ours, what land can we reclaim as ours, that is an asset that would rebuild into us financially. And so I think that in some sense could also be a part of financial literacy.
If it's okay, I just wanted to add, and I'm sorry if I'm cutting anyone off. I think I agree with Aaliyah in saying that financial education needs to be implemented in these schools. But I also think it's even more important to get the parents involved of those students. You know, there are many times where parents won't have that conversation or won't feel comfortable with having that conversation about finances with their kids, maybe because they believe they're too young, or they won't understand it, or maybe that they don't understand it themselves. So I think that if you can get the family as a whole involved, that's when financial literacy in schools would be successful.
Definitely. I totally agree with that. I just recently tried to apply for a financial literacy class, and it's crazy. My question is to Dan and Mr. Karan. In your opinion, do you feel that the government approach towards immigration has been effective?
So right now, I don't have the stats on it. I wish I did, and I wish I came more prepared for this question. But you could just see with what's going on right now with the political climate of our country, that it's not working, right? We have done such a poor job. And if we want to talk about violation of human rights, the fact that we're taking away children from their parents, we have families being broken apart, we have clients who we represent at Queens Criminal Court having to be, scared that once they walk out of that courthouse, ICE is going to scoop them up. Right. And that's a huge problem that we're having. So no, I don't think this country's done a good job in terms of immigration.
Jaden, great question. I also agree with Daniel. I don't think we've done a very good job. And, let's take a look at it this way, right? We all live here in New York. Look at the people from the countries we see, right? I know I grew up here in Queens. I haven't met very many French people. I haven't met very many English people, right? Now, the people that tend to emigrate are people that come from countries where there's less opportunity, right? You leave a situation to try to go to a better one. And the way I tie this all in is we have so many immigrants from nations in Central America, in nations in South America, but much of that is related to our foreign policy. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to give everyone a history lecture here, but if you look at what we've done throughout the course of history, look at the 80s. We had a banana company in Guatemala. We supported the Contras in Nicaragua. The Cuban, once the Cuban Revolution happened, all we did was try to overthrow Castro. My point is we've caused this upheaval in all of these countries. These people do not want to leave their homes. Someone from Guatemala doesn't want to leave Guatemala. They don't think as greatly of our country as we all seem to think they do, okay? It's because conditions are there that are forcing them. You think anyone wants to be on a caravan for weeks where there's no promise of food and where you may be in immigration detention center? No, nobody wants to do that. It's because our policies have created, these countries where there is no opportunity. If we work to build up countries like Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua and Cuba and Venezuela, people would not want to leave. They don't want to leave their homes. People are happy where they grew up. We just need to create an atmosphere. And sorry, just to tie this all in, the same thing in the Middle East. The Middle East has been torn up by Western, policies as well. And that's also why you see so much emigration from the Middle East. Why are there so many Italians and Irish in New York? Because those countries, were impoverished at a period of time in history. That's why we don't see French. That's why we don't see as many English. They come from countries that have been torn apart. And I would say that our policies, our foreign policies, are directly related to, you know, in directly related to why some of these countries have not prospered. By being the #1 economy in the world, we can use that as leverage, and that is absolutely what we do to control the world's economy.
Thank you for such an elaborate answer. The next question is going to be towards Sam Yang, and we're going to be asking, should immigrants have easy access to health insurance?
So I'm not really knowledgeable regarding that aspect. However, I do know that the city did pass a law which stating that even no matter your immigration status, you could still get health care in New York City. So I mean, again, that's something like that's out of my range. I mainly deal with housing, but yeah, I believe that if someone needs health insurance, they could definitely get health insurance in New York City. I know at the moment right now it's based on specific zip codes, but they are trying to expand the program.
All right, thank you. And the last question, this can be towards anybody who wants to answer, but the question is, do you believe that our voices are heard as people fighting for a cause/justice?
So, yes, I do believe that this summer was an example. The country was in unrest because we finally decided to speak. And I don't mean finally because we weren't speaking before. I just think that we weren't speaking loudly and we weren't speaking directly to the people who needed to listen. And now we have decided that enough is enough and we will not take it. So yes, I do believe our voices are being heard. Can it be lessened? Yes, if we don't stay vigilant on what we need, and we must continue to speak. I think our voices will be heard when we start at the very basic and lowest levels. A lot of us are always looking to go to the president, the vice president, but we need to start at the assemblyman. We need to start at our councilmen. We need to start at our local boards and hold the pressure there, because that's where most of it affects us. And as long as we continue to talk, as long as we continue to shout, as long as we continue to fight, we will be heard. But if we become lax and lazy and think that someone else will fight for us, then we will be quieted.
Very well said. I saw that Karan had also had his hand up.
You know, Miriam really took the steam out of my sail, because I really echoed, I wanted to echo exactly what she's saying. I don't think our voices were heard. And also, like Miriam said, not because we weren't looking to be heard. It was just at a time where we were muffled, where, we weren't able to impact the country the way we are now. I think we have a special opportunity right now. I think that the forces in this country have led us to this moment where we are being heard for the first time in a very long time. But we must stay vigilant, just as she stressed. We must seize this opportunity. We don't know how long this opportunity is going to last. Yeah, they're listening to us now, but that can change 2 years from now. So in this moment, while we have it, we need to fight for every single thing we can. That means prison reform, workers' reform, healthcare, immigration, all of it across the board, because this is our moment, and we can get more done in this small moment in history than they did in the last 30 years. And not because they didn't fight, but maybe they fought so that we could have this moment. We shouldn't let that go.
Well said, for real.
Sabrina, I see you got your hand up.
I definitely agree with what Ms. Adigan and Karan have said. I personally believe that our voices have always been heard. And that is the reason for why laws are violated for political assassinations and, for propaganda. So our voices have always been heard. I think the real question is, are our voices being heard by the right people in the right places? And Ms. Adigan, I believe, touched on that, not trying to go straight to the top to be heard, but starting from the people that we can reach, so that those people can reach the person at the next level, and then the person at the next level, and it becomes a sort of chain reaction. And, keeping that momentum, like never losing that steam for the causes that we're vocalizing about, always applying pressure. So I believe that our voices are always being heard.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Aaliyah.
Oh, Sabrina. I agree with what was said from everyone already. I just wanted to also add that I feel like now is just a even greater time to be able to spread really say what was on our minds and have our voices heard because of the whole pandemic situation. It has its pros and it has its cons, and I feel like now that everybody is more at home and more virtual, it was just a great opportunity for everyone to have their time to sit down and learn more about what's going on in this country because we didn't have that much else to do. And then at the same time, since everyone is virtual, it gave people a platform to share their ideas and for other people to watch their ideas and learn from them. And a lot of people had the chance to do a lot of social networking. And I feel like if we just continue taking advantage of our technology, everybody's learning how to use it and everybody is connecting with each other. If we continue to just take advantage of the resources we have now, I feel like this movement we have going on, this momentum that we're building up, is surely going to increase.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I specifically remember when we were doing the summer internship and we were talking about the upcoming election, a lot of our participants felt that there was no point. And now that we're looking back at it, I mean, think about the states that were the huge factors in this election, right? For example, Georgia, 50% of the votes, Black. Pennsylvania is going to be 20 to 25% were Black Americans who showed to the polls, right? And we need to remember that specifically in Georgia, Atlanta was the capital of the Confederacy. And yet here we are, Atlanta turned Georgia blue. So I'm a huge optimist. I think things will get better. We just need to continue to communicate just like we did and mobilize. So that's what I have to just say.
Yeah, and allow me to just piggyback off of Daniel's sentiment. I think that we shouldn't just mobilize when things are bad. I think we should mobilize in preparation for and towards a goal, right? I don't think that we should wait for the next police killing because it will happen. I don't think that we should wait for an expansion of the current homelessness crisis that we see. I don't think we should wait for these large events to happen, but I think we should be active now. And that's what you all are doing tonight by having this panel discussion, by getting young folks involved in the discourse so that you guys can understand that we're working to an end. And that's important to me personally.
So if I could just say one more thing, I know that I've been breaking it up. I just wanted to point out that tonight this was phenomenal, and that as a representative of the Queens District Attorney's Office, this is an example that although many may not see it, that the district attorney that is currently sitting is someone who's about justice, someone who's about change, and someone who's about making actions, because I wouldn't be sitting here if she didn't have faith in me, knowing what my views are and hiring me and placing me in the position in which she did. And I encourage all of you, like I said before, the way to make change is to be about change and to get yourself involved in organizations and activities like you're doing tonight, where you can then have your voice be heard, so that as we keep yelling and screaming, we're yelling and screaming to the right people.
Thank you so much to everybody. I want to say thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to our panelists, Mr. Karan Kukreja. Thank you, Daniel Rosero. Thank you, Aaliyah St. Omer. Thank you, Ms. Miriam. Thank you, Sam Yang, Assemblyman Khalil Anderson, Dan Brown for helping me put this together as well, getting Miriam here. Thank you, Andre Appreciate, although I know he left early. And thank you to everybody for participating. Thank you also to the Queens Defenders Blank Project members who did a phenomenal job at moderating and asking the questions to our fantastic panelists. But definitely we should continue to have these conversations and bring awareness to many issues and topics that are, happening today. Thank you to Queens Defenders, especially for making this happen and for allowing this to happen. We need to bring more awareness to multiple topics that are, being brought up in conversations. But for the most part, if you have any questions regarding the Blank Project and any other questions regarding any social justice programming that we're doing that myself and Angela Williams do organize, or any programs that Queens Defenders organizes in general, please make sure that you check out our social media pages at queensdefenders.com or even on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And thank you again for everybody for joining.